Hey there, tubers. Today's video is going to be on the 400-hour service on my 2023 Bobcat CT2025 Tractor. So you'll need about 5.8 gallons of transmission differential fluid, about 6.5 quarts of engine oil, and then hydrostatic filter is a 7375650. Hydraulic filter is a 6695918. Engine oil filter a 7384298, and a fuel filter 7374363. And then I sample my oil, so I've got a couple of sample kits here. And we'll get started on this service with draining the differential fluid. That'll take the longest, so I'll get that draining, and then I'll go on to probably the engine oil and such. And on this, there are 3 drains, one on each side of the bottom of the axle, and then around here in the kind of off to one side here on the axle. I'm not sure why they do 3 drains. There must be a little bit of a lip here where they bolt together. But I'll get all 3 of those pulled and get them to draining, and that'll take a little bit. And while I'm on the subject of these axles, I've read quite a bit that these are known to leak in here, and as you can tell, I must have a small seep, but that's pretty standard from what I understand on these tractors. So don't be alarmed by it, but definitely keep an eye on it. If it gets to the point it's too bad, I'll take it in and have warranty work done on it, but as it is right now, that's not too bad. Alright, so got the plugs out. 14mm wrench will take those out. Got those draining. They're nice and clean looking, so I'm happy about that. So then while these are draining, I'll get the pan under here and start to drain the engine oil. So I'll be right back. Well, I'm underneath here now, and on these tractors, the drive line goes through the middle of the oil pan, so you end up with 2 sumps, one here and one there. So you got to pull 2 plugs. 17mm will take those plugs out, but it makes it kind of fun to pull oil samples. I like to pull a little bit out of each side, just in case there's a difference there. I don't know whether that matters or not, but that's how I do it. And pulling out of 2, I tend to make a mess, so I'll get these unplugged and try and minimize my mess, and we'll move on to the next thing. Be right back. Okay, so the engine oil has been draining for a while here, and it's pretty much stopped. Still got some draining going on the front axle here, so we'll give that a little bit more time. But I'll get the drain plugs back in this oil pan. They're to be torqued between 23 and 27 foot-pounds, so I shoot for 25 when I do it. And I'll get those back in, and then we'll pull that engine oil filter, see what kind of mess we can make there. Alright, I got those plugs back in. Next step will be to get this filter off. Now, in their engineering wisdom, they've got a ground wire that's tied up against it. It comes around here, and the holder's up underneath there. I guess it probably isn't a super big deal. It is just a ground, but I don't like how it sits against the filter here. And one of the other things is I did change my engine oil at 50 hours. So when I was taking the filters off of this tractor, the hydraulic and hydrostat filters underneath were god awful tight. And in fact, I ended up using a pipe wrench to get those off. It was ridiculous. But when I got to the engine oil filter, I was just able to spin it off by hand. No big deal whatsoever. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. I spun the new one back on and I got it, tight, and then went 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn past that. And that's how I typically do all my filters, and I thought it was good. And about 200 hours into this oil, it came loose. I just happened to stop and get off the tractor for some reason and looked back, and I saw a puddle of oil down under this front axle. And I came back and I had oil all around here. You can kind of see the remnants of it, and it had started streaming out of there. And when I touched it, it was loose as can be. So I really reefed on it to get it back on there and in place. I just lucked out that I caught it, otherwise it could have been a catastrophic deal for me. But I don't know whether at that 50 hours that it had started to back off then on that original one is why it was so loose, but I'm guessing that's probably what it was. And now I've got another 150 hours on this oil since I tightened that back up. And I'll see just how loose this is. I can't move it by hand, so I'll get my pipe wrench on there, or not my pipe wrench, but my filter wrench on there, and see how much effort it takes to get it off, and then I'll let you know just how tight you really got to get that. So I'll get that pulled and be back. Alright, I got the new one on here. The old one came off with my filter wrench here, and it came off with about as much force as you would expect a filter to take. It wasn't ridiculously tight, but it was tight. So I normally wouldn't recommend this, but what I did is I put it on as tight as I could with my hand, and I gave it a couple turns with this to make sure it's tight. And then from now on, every so often, I'm gonna come and do a check on the filter to make sure that it's still staying tight. I don't know whether that was just a fluke deal, or whether there's just a certain vibration that this engine puts out that backs that off. But she's on tight now, and as you can see, draining the engine oil first, you get really minimum spill, so it wasn't too bad. You can't get a form a funnel or anything underneath there to catch it, because you got your radiator hose and this electrical line. So this really helps out draining the oil first. So my front axle's still draining, and it's a nice warm day, so it's taking forever. But I guess I'll move on to probably this fuel filter. I'll get that swapped out and show you how that goes. Alright, so this job really sucks. It makes a hell of a mess, because fuel free flows out of the tank that's higher back there than the filter. So that filter ended up being on there tighter than I expected. I'm the one that put it on last, and I know I didn't put it on that tight. But it took some manhandling to get that thing on there, and then as you can see, I had to use some channel locks to get it off. But the next thing you got to do is pull this water separator out. So the new filter, you put this water separator in, just screw it in, then get everything mounted up. So I'll be as quick as I can here so I don't lose too much fuel, but just plan ahead. And there's not a really good spot to put a catch pan, so you're just gonna have to get a hose out and clean stuff up afterwards. So be right back. And another quick thing, just make sure that this O-ring comes with it. It was stuck to the filter itself, so I had to pull it off. but you don't want to put it on without that. Alright, I got that back on. Got that separator good and tight. So now what I'll do is I'll come up here, and this is the breather right here. So I'll open that up, and then up here on top is your primer. So you just push that until you can hear the air coming out, and eventually fuel will start purging out of that, and then that means your filter's full, and then you'll just close this and should be good to go. So I'll get this all primed up, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Well, I've decided instead of doing the hydraulic fluid right now, because that's a pain of a job, I'll go ahead and fill this thing back up with the engine oil. Now the plug is down here on the side of the engine, and it's just a push-pull plug. It doesn't thread in or anything. I guess it works. I'm not sure that I like the idea of it, but it seems to work right now. So this thing holds 6.8 quarts, I believe. So I'll get a funnel and start filling this, but this would be a good time to tell you that this tractor has 400 hours on it. It's about 9 months old or so, and it is using oil. I burned about half a quart in the 350 hours that this oil has on it. I don't like to see new engines using oil. I'm not sure if anybody out there has the same issue with their tractor or not. I thought at first that maybe it was just needed to be broke in, but I would think that at 400 hours it's well on its way to being broke in. So I'll just be monitoring that, and I'll let you know on future videos if it continues to burn it. So I'll get a funnel going and be back in a minute. Alright, so I got the engine oil topped up. I fired it up, filled the filter, and then rechecked it. Got it all the way up to full. So the two notches on there, that's full, that's add. And when you're checking, be careful, because they're sharp and they will cut your rag, and a little burr could go into your engine. So just make sure that you don't do that. And then I fill out of 2.5 gallon jugs, so it's hard to judge, but I'm pretty sure that it's about 2 quarts between there. I was thinking it was 1 quart. I don't know why it's definitely more than 1 quart, but I don't know why they would put such a big gap between them, because this thing holds less than 7 quarts. So if you take 2 quarts to add, this thing's less than 5 quarts actually in the engine, which could be fine. Maybe I'm just overthinking it, but so I might have actually used more oil, or the engine burned more oil in this 350 hours than I thought. I was thinking that was a quart, so it was about halfway. So I was thinking half a quart, but it might be closer to a quart. I'll have to go get some quart-sized jugs and maybe top it off before I drain it the next time. It'll skew my oil samples, but it'll give me a better idea of exactly how much it is burning. And hopefully it doesn't burn any this time, but we'll see. So I use AMSOIL 1540 in everything I have. I just pick one oil and go with it in everything. Just as easier than maintaining a bunch of different oils. So everybody will have their opinion on that, but that's what I do. So I think my axle's finally done draining, so I'll put the plugs in and start filling that up. Alright, just an FYI, there are little rubber gaskets on these to help seal them, and I didn't realize it, but one stuck to the plug down here, or to the tractor, and I didn't pay attention. So when I went to put these on, it had doubled up on one of them. So just make sure that each one of these has its, and that you don't lose it. And they don't call out a torque spec on these, so I'll just go to the good and tight reference. There's no reason to get beefy on these, so I'll just get them snug and call it good. So it's time to fill this. On the right hand side of the tractor is where your fill and measuring dipstick is. And what I use is this AMSOIL 7590 gear oil. It comes in these pouches, so I don't have to use a funnel or anything. I'll just tip it in there, squeeze it out, and be good. Now the book says that this thing holds 6.3 quarts each, but it doesn't say each side or anything like that, so I'm not sure what they're referencing. There's only one fill port, so is it each time you fill it or each side? Not sure, but we'll start putting them in and see just how much this thing holds. I did it at the 50 hour and I don't remember how much I put in, and I went back and referenced that video, and apparently I didn't say what I put in, so I apologize on that, but we'll get it straightened out on this one. So I'll see you in a minute. Well, I got 6 quarts in it, and right now on the dipstick it's showing that it's full, but I'm guessing as slow as it drained out of these axles, it's going to take some time for it to drain back down into the bottom and stuff. So I'm going to give it some time, and then we'll recheck it and probably add some more. But one thing I thought looked pretty good when it was coming out was this oil. It looked clean, but now that I've got it out here, and I just cut these jugs open so they were fresh and clean. I don't know whether the camera picks it up or not, but there is a lot of metal floating around in that. I know it's common to have some, but for the second drain on this, I would thought that it would drop down a bit, but so it is needed at the intervals they call for. I would definitely not run it much longer than this for what metal is in there. So probably my next project is draining this hydraulic oil. Now it holds just under 6 gallons, and I had to cut a 5-gallon bucket down. So this is going to be fun. I'm probably going to make a bit of a mess, but I'm going to drain it and try and get the plug back in it, stop it, pull it out, throw it in a bigger jug, and then put this back under and drain it again. And then I'll pull the filters. That way I minimize the fluid loss on the filters. And then one of them, I think it's the hydraulic filter, free flows. The Hydrostat doesn't. So if I put a new filter on the hydraulic side, then it's going to free flow this old oil back into that filter, and I don't want to do that. So I'll drain it first, then pull the filters. So I'll see you in a little bit. I guess I should tell you what size drain plugs these are before I get too far into this. There's one right there, and then there's one right here. So there's 2 drains for this transmission. The back one there, that's 30 millimeters, and this one's a 14. So you want to pull both of them and to get everything out of this transmission. And if you have a front mount PTO, there'll be yet another one, but I'm not entirely sure. I think it might actually bolt under that, but don't quote me on that. So you could have another drain if you've got the front PTO. Alright, I'll get started. Okay, so I got the hydraulic oil drained. It looks like about 5 gallons came out, so there might be a bit still in some of these hydraulic cylinders. I'll find out for sure when I start filling it back up just how much I stick in. But I got the hydraulic filter here changed, and then on the other side of the tractor is the Hydrostat. Nice bright orange one. I got both those changed out, and I guess I haven't stated it to any other time, but you do want to put a nice film of clean oil on all the gaskets, so engine oil, filter, fuel filter, and hydraulic and hydrostat filters, just so that they go on nicely and those gaskets don't stick and make it a bear to get off. So the next thing I'll do is I'll come back here, and now for some reason I lowered the lift arms thinking that they were external cylinders, but they're not on this. So I've made myself an issue. I can get this plug out, but getting a funnel in there is going to be a pain. So where this is an internal lift assembly, I don't know that it matters. I just normally put my lift arms down when I change the hydraulic fluid in anything, just to make sure that all the fluid is in the sump. So, but I'll get that pulled and start filling it and see how much I stick in. Alrighty, I got that topped up. I went ahead and fired it up, ran the hydraulics and everything, and made sure that it was dead on full after going through all the filters and everything. And I stuck right at 5 gallons of oil in it. So there's 0.8 somewhere that didn't come out. Not quite sure where, but, and I don't think that includes the bucket and loader and any of that kind of stuff. That's just the tractor as it sits. So maybe I got a little more in the cylinders on the lift arms on the loader or something, but that pretty much wraps up the major stuff. There'll be a lot of little things, and I'll go over them here with you. I did check the front end again. It's still sitting right at full with 6 quarts, so I'll have to run the tractor a bit and then check it again. It should have by now drained over and lowered, but it hasn't. So I'm not quite sure what when it says 6.3 each means. On my 55 it said 7.5 quarts or something each, and I ended up putting 10 quarts in it, so not quite sure where the discrepancy is, but after running it a bit, maybe it'll move it around, and I'll need to add some more, but as of right now, 6 quarts put her on full. And with that, there's going to be a bunch of stuff that you need to do in addition to just the 400-hour stuff. The 400-hour just calls for engine oil and filter, transmission fluid, transmission filter, and hydrostat filter, and the front axle oil. But what some people don't take into account is that you need to do everything that is divisible by it. So every 400 hours, 200 goes into 400, 100 goes into 400, so there's 50 and 10. So you've got more than just the 400 hour to do. And so that's why I did the fuel filter, which is on the 200 hour. Now some of it is called out, like the transmission filter and hydrostat filter is on the 200 and the 400. That's because it's every 200 hours. But we can go through what they want you to do on the 10 hours. And that's basically what I do every day anyway. I just check all the fluid levels, tire pressures, and I just do an overall look at the whole tractor. You know, you've got look at your coolant hoses, your air intake, your PTO shaft and splines, linkages, and then one of the things I don't necessarily do every day is the parking brake, seat belt check, horn check, and the safety system checks. But for the most part, I do everything that they're calling out every 10 hours every day before I run the tractor. Now this had a few things you had to do on the first 50 hours, but you don't have to do them 50 hours every 50 hours after that. And one of the things is your wheel bolt torques. So on the front and rear, you need to check the torque on those. They do torque strike them from the factory, so you can kind of see they line up. So they haven't moved according to that. but you'll still want to put a torque wrench on them. And the front ones are supposed to be between 57 and 67 foot-pounds, and then the rear ones are supposed to be between 144 and 166 foot-pounds. And you're supposed to do that every 50 hours. So some of the other things on like the 100 hours is check your battery cables and connections, check your engine air filter, which I check that quite often, just because it's always running in the dirt. So 100 hours is probably too long for me to go between checks. So one thing on the list there is to check your air filter, and that's pretty simple on these. I love the positioning of the filters. There'll be a third clamp on the back side here, if I can get it. Nope, well, I'll try from this side. There it is. And there she is. A little dusty, but doesn't look too terrible bad. And then I did add an inner filter because this tractor did not come with an inner, but they do sell them at Bobcat, so why they don't put them in, I'm not sure. I know that I have heard from some people that theirs did come with them. None of my tractors have come with them, so I don't know whether it's something that each individual dealer does or why, but I highly recommend an inner filter. So I'll go blow this out. I think it looks probably good enough to keep running, and put it back together. And then one thing I'll show you how to do is your alternator and fan belt. So what they want you to do is come over here and you check it on this side with the alternator, halfway in between the crank pulley and the alternator pulley, and you'll pick a spot with a tape measure and just put 5 pounds of tension and see what the deflection is. And it needs to be between 0.28 and I think 0.35 inches, so not a lot. So I'll get a tape measure out and see where this one is. Tape measure in here, and it's showing about 5 3/4 right now. So I'll put a little tension on it and then see where it sits. I have to put the camera down here. Can't do this with one hand, so I'll let you know what I find out. Alright, so it ended up being about 1/3 of an inch of deflection, which falls within the limitations of it. If it had been too loose, you just loosen this lower bolt up, this upper one, and then just put a little tension on it, and check it again. So then we'll see here. You do the clutch pedal free play, and that one is also the parking brake free play and the clutch free play. They're both the same, so it's 0.8 to 1.2 inches. And what I'll do is, again, I'll put a tape measure on it, and then you just go to where you feel a little tension on that, and you'll measure the difference, and you'll do the same on the parking brake. And just looking at it, the parking brake's got a lot more play in it than this brake, the clutch does. So on the clutch side, there's an adjustment turnbuckle right here, and there'll be another one on the other side for the brake. And so you'll just take a tape, and I'll probably find a spot here somewhere, I'm guessing probably right in here. Pull it up to here, and 0.8 to 1.2 inches. That looks a little tight to me, so I might have to back that off, but the brake might be pretty close. So I'll check that off camera here and let you know what I find out. Well, the clutch ended up being about 1/4 of an inch of play, so that's too tight. So what we do is we'll come under here and hopefully get a good view for you. You loosen this jam nut, which the jam nut is a 14, and then this bigger nut is what you tighten or loosen with, and that's a 19 millimeter. So I'll break that loose, I'll give it a couple turns here, and then I'll check it again, and we'll try and get it a little closer to what it's supposed to be. So I backed this off, and you can see just about how much I did. Quite a few turns there. And I'll put this jam nut back up against it, tighten that down, and that got me at the minimum, which was 0.8 of an inch. I'm not sure why they want it that loose, but apparently they did. Now this is just gonna flop as I'm driving, which might wear things a little prematurely, but that's what they say. So as you can tell, there's quite a bit more free play in that than there was. So I got that side adjusted. We'll go over to the other side and see what it looks like. Okay, so this one is at 1 inch, so it falls within the criteria, so I don't have to adjust it. But if I did, I'd come over here, and there's a jam nut there, and one right there. Those are 19 millimeters. You just break those loose and give that turnbuckle a couple turns, and get it within spec. So that was pretty easy. Now we'll move on to the next stuff. So the next items will be just to grease everything, check your fuel line, check your spark arrestor if you have one. This tractor does not have one. If it did, it would be screwed in right here and would extend out a little bit. So I don't have to do that. Now greasing wise, since this has the loader, you've got 2 there, 2 there, you got 4 down here. So down under here there should be a grease zerk. It might be on the other side, on the front and back of the front axle. And then you've got your top link, your adjustable lift arm there, and I don't think there's really anything else that needs greased on this thing. I think it's pretty simple. Alright, back to the sheet. So then we've already done the transmission hydrostat fuel filter. Just need to check your cooling system, which is the hose and clamps, your hydraulic and power steering hoses, your air intake hoses, and adjust your and check your toe in. So on the toe in, what I do is I get a tape measure and I find the center casting seam on this tire, and I'll put it over on that side and I'll pull it across down as low as I can see it and read it, and then I'll do the same on the back side of the tire, and then you can have it to from 0.08 to 0.3 inches, so almost dead even to 0.3 inches or a third of an inch of toe in, and that's your limits. So I'll put a tape down here and see what I got, and if I need to adjust it, I'll have to break the jam nuts here and on the other side, and then turn them evenly and get this thing back in alignment. But I think it should be pretty close. Alright, I measured the front and I just measured the back, and they're 1/8 of an inch difference, so that falls within spec, so I don't have to adjust that. So we'll go back to the sheet here. Well, that covers everything that you need to do for the 400-hour service. I know I kind of glanced over a lot of this stuff fairly quickly, but a lot of it is common sense stuff, you know, all the 10-hour stuff, you know, and the big things I did show you, and that pretty much covers the 400-hour service on this 2025. I've got about $460 in oil and filters on it, and it took me 4 to 5 hours to do. I didn't look at the start time, but it's taken me a while, mainly because I let things drain for a bit before I put the plugs back in. So you could probably do it quicker than I did, and depending on what fluids and filters you use, you could probably do it a little cheaper, but that gives you kind of the ballpark of it. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.